Hi folks. The main subject of today's video is going to be Starline 308 brass. I've always heard really good things about Starline pistol brass, and I've used some myself, and they just seem to be just now getting into the rifle side of things. And they released this 308 Winchester brass last year at some point. So that's the main subject of the video. I've got some tests and some measurements and things I want to go over, but first I kind of need to digress here a little bit and talk about some more general 308 stuff here for the channel. You've probably seen my Tikka 308 before if you've been hanging around the channel. Got it back out. I haven't had an optic on it for a while, and this scope was on my 6.5 Grendel, but I put something else on it and figured I'd take the opportunity to go ahead and throw this scope on the 308 and do a little bit of testing. So I've got several videos planned here really soon, and this is the configuration that the Tikka is going to be in for the testing. This is my other 308 that I don't think I've ever shown on the channel. This is a Savage Model 99F. I love this gun. It is a lever action. One of the most famous lever actions made, right? I don't need to tell you guys about the Savage Model 99, but this is mine. This was given to me by my grandfather, and it's kind of a funny story, at least in my crazy mind, but he hated this gun. He's still alive, by the way. He missed several deer with this gun and thought it was basically cursed and didn't use it much anymore until one time my dad decided to try and borrow it from him for a hunt, and got out in the woods and realized the scope he had on there had tiny crosshairs. You know, my grandfather's always been big into bench rest shooting, and you know, most of his scopes are target scopes, and the scope he had on this gun, it was just too hard to see the crosshairs. And my dad and I, we both believe that's probably what was going on back then, because he'd take it to the range, it shot great, but then he'd take it in the woods and he'd end up missing a deer. So my dad put a cheap little 3-9 scope on it, and he and I both killed several deer with this gun. So my grandfather finally just told me to take it. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to pull it out and test some of this Starline brass in it. I've got this 4-12 Vortex Crossfire 2 on here. Just put this guy on here. I've got the old shoot through scope rings. They're a little bit high. I may look into another option for this gun for kind of long term. I'd kind of like to just get a good load worked up for it and then put it in the safe, because I don't want to shoot it a whole lot. I've got other guns to wear out. So this one, I don't want to wear it out. I want to have it ready for hunting at a moment's notice. So that's the plan for this guy. You won't see this guy around a whole lot, but here in the next couple videos for this little series I've got planned, we'll be shooting this guy as well. So here's what I've done. I ordered 50 pieces of the Starline brass, and here they all are. Here they are, all loaded up and ready to rock. I've got, I put some 168 grain AMAXs and shooting 40 grains of IMR 4895. Just a mild charge, 50 rounds really quick. And what I want to use these first 50 shots for is to not only kind of fire form the brass and see how it looks after being fired, but also I need to, you know, these are new optics on both of these guns, so I need to get them sighted in and just kind of basic function testing. So that's going to be these first 50 rounds, is just kind of function testing the guns, and then what we'll do is we'll go in and have a really up close look at the brass in this video and see how it looks as once fired brass. Now then I want to do 4 or 5 308 videos here in the next couple weeks, just trying some different loads in my two guns. I haven't even really picked out bullets and powders yet, but I just kind of want to throw together a couple 308 videos and use this Starline brass throughout that series. Then after 4 or 5 firings, we'll probably have another up close look at the brass, see how it's holding up, and that'll be that. So that's kind of that's the plan here with 308. I want to do 4 or 5 videos here really quick and try out this Starline brass, and at the same time maybe find a good load for that for the Savage to load up a bunch of. So that's really pretty much it. I might take a couple quick videos of the shooting here, but yeah, maybe not. We're basically just going right back to the bench, and at that point we'll have once fired brass. I've got all my measurements that I took before I loaded it, so we'll just have a nice up close look at this brass and see how it looks. One thing I wanted to show you guys about my Savage is it does have the round counter on the side where it tells you how many rounds are in the magazine. I've always thought that was just the coolest feature. It's got a rotary, I think they call it, magazine, where you just push them down in and they all kind of go into a circle here. So I've got 5 rounds in it, 1 in the chamber, and you can see here on the little indicator it says 4. It's pretty cool. I also love the finish there. I just really like this gun a whole lot. It is a beauty. Okay, so our Starline brass has successfully been fired once. And I guess I should go over maybe a little bit more of the details here about the brass itself. When I first took it out of the package, I did take several videos and pictures of it. It's good looking brass. It's pretty darn affordable. I bought it from Mid-South Shooter Supply, and 50 pieces was $22.05. So, you know, that's not bad. That's pretty close to Winchester prices, I think. It's a good step cheaper than Hornady and a whole lot cheaper than, you know, Norma and Lapua. It seems to be good brass. Like it seems to be made well. Seems to be made very well. You know, Starline hasn't been in the bottlenecked rifle stuff. This is their first offering for bottleneck rifle, as far as I know. They've always been pistol brass people, and this seems to be a good entry. They did, you know, just the first look, they've done a pretty nice job. I think they've got more planned, and one of them's 300 Blackout. I watched some of their videos on the Starline YouTube channel, and they mentioned in one of those that 300 Blackout was in the pipeline, so that'd be pretty freaking sweet. And this 308 looks pretty good itself. All right, I'll take you through the life of one of these cases so far, and then we'll go over each of the measurements and observations I've had up to this point. So this brass, brand new, came out of a plastic bag, no fancy packaging. It would chamber in both of my guns, but the necks were very, very small. I went ahead and ran them through a Fulling 3 sizing die. I don't think the body got touched much, if at all, but the necks were tight, and it was a decent amount of force to get the expander ball, you know, down through the neck of the case. So you could probably neck size these only, maybe, straight out of the package, but the Fulling sizing die, I don't really think it did a whole lot more than neck size it anyway. So that was the first step. After sizing, I did, you know, measure them, and they were all quite short. They were all well short of trim length, so I did not trim them before the first loading. I just deburred and chamfered the case mouth and went on from there. So then it was primer, and the primer pockets felt pretty good. We'll prime them again here in this video and make sure that give you my thoughts so far on the primer pockets. But the primer pockets, they weren't crazy tight, but they weren't certainly weren't loose and sloppy. But from that point, I just loaded them up with the 168 grain AMAX load I mentioned before, and we went out and fired them. At that point, I went ahead and full length sized these guys again, because I wanted to get a good idea for how much they were stretching, or how much they were going to stretch. One thing I did notice, you know, I've kept the Tikka brass separate from the Savage brass, and I plan to do that all the way through. Like the 25 pieces that are being used for the Tikka are going to be the same 25 all the way through, and then the 25 for the Savage are going to stay. The Savage has a much sloppier chamber because, you know, this has been resized already, but before I resized them, I did measure all of them to see what the distance was from the cartridge base to the shoulder here with a Hornady case comparator die, or a Hornady case comparator set. The Tikka came out at about 1.620 inches, and the Savage came out at about 1.625. So the Savage brass got blown out five more. The shoulder got blown 5 more thousandths than the Tikka. So I went ahead and ran these guys through a full length sizing die again, and it was a full sizing. You know, the shell holder full contact with the sizing die, so they got a full resize. Checking with the comparator tool, that actually didn't bump the shoulder any on the Tikka stuff. The 1.620 came out to 1.620. So after they were sized, they did the Tikka brass, the shoulder really didn't get moved much, if at all. The Savage brass, they got bumped down the 5 thousandths that they had, that 5 extra thousandths that they had got knocked off and took them down to about the 1.620, 1.621 actually, this one I've got in my hand right now. I'm kind of rambling here. This is probably hard to follow, but I'm almost done here. So the Savage brass that got sized more did stretch more by a couple thousandths. The Tikka brass on average stretched about 5 thousandths, and the Savage brass stretched about 7 thousandths. So at that point, once all the brass had stretched, I did go ahead and trim them all. So these have all been trimmed to 2.002. 2.005 is the normal trim length for 308, but I had a couple that were a little bit short of that, and I wanted to trim them all uniform right now, even if it meant, you know, taking some of them a couple thousandths short. I wanted good weight measurements with them all at the same length, so I went ahead and just, trimmed them. And then deburred and chamfered the case mouth, and that's how they sit right now. I did tumble them. I did, run them through the wet tumbler to get them looking pretty again, just so that we could see anything weird that might be going on with the brass, and nothing weird was going on. All right, so that's the life of a case up to this point. Now, let's look at a couple different charts and measurements that I've taken. And the first is let's look at the case length as they came out of the package. So you can see there were 17 of them that were exactly 2 inches. The shortest was 1.996, the longest was 2.004. So there was an 8 thousandths variation in case length as they came out of the package, with the average being 2. That's not bad. So that's not bad. So as I mentioned, after the first firing, all of the cases stretched between 5 and 7 thousandths. And you can see that the one here on this initial length that was 1.996, it barely made it over 2 inches. So those few short ones, we kind of had to trim back to match those guys. So after the first firing, now they've all stretched a little bit and they've all been trimmed to 2.002. As far as weight variation and an average weight, So in the virgin state here, you can see what we have. We had about a 4-grain spread, it looks like. 3.8 or 3.9 grain spread, with the most cases being, what is that, 179.0 and 179.1. So they're kind of in that 179 range straight out of the box. Now, once I fired them, sized them, and trimmed them, this is the new chart of the weight. It did, bring in the overall spread by a couple tenths, but we've still got about 3.5 grains of total spread and weight. These numbers aren't bad. Like, these aren't bad at all. I wouldn't call them spectacular, but definitely no problem. I would say, I would definitely call this acceptable weight consistency. So let's see, what have we talked about the weight. Oh, okay, and on the weight, like I said, these are about 179, or after the resizing and trimming, you might call it more like 178.5 or something like that. Well, I pulled out some other cases and it looked like Federals were about 177. Some WC NATO brass I had was 177. Some of my Lapua was 174. Some PMC was 179. They're all right in that same ballpark as far as case weight goes. So these, I guess, maybe trend a little bit heavy. They are a couple grains heavier than Lapua, but pretty close to Federal. So pretty average as far as the total case weight goes. It matches what we see in other brands. Let's see, we talked about length, we talked about weight. The other thing to talk about here is case capacity. So straight out of the box, I put primers in a couple of these guys, and then what you do is you weigh them on your scale, then you fill the case completely with water, and then weigh that, and then subtract that from the original, and you get a weight of water that represents the amount of capacity in the case. Yeah, that makes sense, right? In their virgin state, the case capacity was 53.6 grains of water. And it was pretty consistent. The case capacity was really quite consistent. They were all within a couple tenths of that number, but 53.6 was the average. After they were fired, now this brings in the sloppy chamber of the Savage. The Savage case capacity was 54.6. So that's a 1 grain of water increase. So from 53.6 up to 54.6. And the Tikka was 54.1. So half a grain more water with the Tikka brass and 1 grain more water in the Savage brass. That makes sense? And they were also pretty darn consistent, just like they were before they were fired. Now, I have not measured the case capacity since they've been resized after firing. I'd have to put some primers in them, and then, the water ruins them. So I don't think I'll even bother. I don't know that it really matters all that much, but yeah, it just kind of is what it is. So is there anything else I should mention about the brass? I don't think so. I'll tell you what, let me put a couple primers in here. The primer pockets felt good that first time, as I mentioned. Not quite as tight as like Lapua or Norma brass, which always kind of seems to have those really tight but smooth primer pockets. So they weren't quite that sexy, but they were not bad at all. Felt good being primed. So let's see if that's still the case. Yeah, they just feel good. Pretty darn smooth. Pretty tight, no sloppiness about them. Yeah, those first 10 feel great. So nothing to complain about there with the primer pockets. The flash holes. are not gnarly. Like I thought about running, where's my flash hole deburr? So yeah, I thought about hitting these guys with a flash hole deburr, you know, that deburrs the inside of that flash hole inside of there. But I've decided against it. For now, let's just run them as they come. And we won't really do any advanced case prep on these. We'll just see how they shoot in their standard way. See if I can get you guys a neck thickness measurement. So I've tested several cases, and they all seem to be reading between 13 and 14 thousandths as far as neck thickness goes. A little bit of variation there, you know, but not too bad. So yeah, neck wall thickness about 13 to 14 thousandths. Later on, as we move along in this process, you know, maybe towards the end, like once we're almost done, maybe we'll do a little bit of testing where maybe we neck turn and deburr the flash holes and uniform the primer pockets or something and see if our groups improve. Maybe we'll make a video out of that. But for the time being, I just want to leave this stuff in its standard configuration so you guys can get an idea of how it performs out of the box. I think it's going to be a good performer. I think it's going to be a really good performer. It seems to be nice, well-made brass. So, what have we got planned for this here brass? I've got lots of plans for this brass. I've been sitting down trying to make a list of some of the videos I want to make coming up here soon. And for 308, I want to do the 110 grain Hornady Z Max. Same as the A Max. I have never tested a bullet this light in 308. I've always been a heavier bullet shooter, but I want to try these guys out. Little flat base 110 grain 110 grain guy. We ought to be able to get that thing really smoking out of 308. So I want to test that bullet. I want to test the 145 grain Lehigh Defense Controlled Chaos. Look at that. Oh, baby. Tell me that wouldn't kick some butt. So I want to try this guy. I want to try the 175 grain Maker T-Rex. It's another all copper guy that ought to kick a little bit of butt. I want to try the stupid 147 grain military surplus style, you know, M80 bullet. I cannot get this stupid bullet to fly at all out of 300 blackout. So I've got like 8 million bullets and I need to find something that'll shoot them. So we'll see if 308 can get any decent accuracy out of the 147s. There are a couple cast bullets I want to try. I've never tried, I just got into bullet casting not that long ago. I've got several cast bullets I want to try in 308. One of them is a 160 grain Lee mold. And the other is a 200 grain NOE mold. So I've got these guys powder coated. I want to try some cast and powder coated bullets in 308. And we'll do it with the Starline. Oh, and I want to try the 185 grain Burger hybrid target. Some of those bad boys. So I think that's pretty much it for this video. I just wanted to give you guys a quick up-close look at the brass and introduce this little series here, right? This will be the common factor in this barrage of upcoming 308 videos. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this brass holds up. I'm looking forward to shooting my Savage some. I haven't shot it much in quite a while, so looking forward to it. So this brass is, you know, fully prepped and heck, almost finished with priming here. So this stuff's ready for powder and bullets. So I'm going to roll straight into the next video, which I think is probably going to be these 110 grain Z-Maxes. We'll try those out first, and then we'll just keep on rolling from there and see where it takes us. But those 8 should give us a good little video series here. So I'll see you guys next time.